My name's Russell Spatz. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of the South Dixie group, and I haven't done enough to have a drink since January 25th, 1981. So I'm grateful to be here. You know, I believe this is the longest. This group has the oldest step series, continuous step series. I think I asked. You told me. I think I'm 72 years old. I'm 72. I wasn't sure. We figured that out. I am 72, right? Because really, after a while, there's no use counting. What's the point? So, the step series in this group has been having the step series for 72 years.
Since you were born.
Since I was born. You know, and I've been doing a series. I've been doing every year for over 20 years. I've come up here and done this series from Cuba, wherever I come from. I'm all the way down. I'm a couple of hours south of here, so. And it's always a great pleasure being here. I see a lot of friends, a lot of people I've known over the last 20, 30 years. And Howie, I want to give you, Howie came up to me. Every once in a while this happens, and he says, "You don't remember me, but you know Nick C. and I, 15 years ago, had dinner with you at an Italian restaurant." I said, "Yeah, and you borrowed $100 from me. I remember you like it was yesterday." And he immediately explained to me that I may have been mistaken, okay? But I may be mixing him up, but I told him I forgive him anyway. Don't worry about the money. It's no big deal. So it's always good to be here with you guys. And so I'm going to talk about something. I admire Don for trying to anticipate what he thinks I'm going to say. How would you know what I'm going to say? I don't know what I'm going to say. You know, I mean, at these prices, I don't sit down and plan things. Although, in this night, it's like a special night because I've actually brought a book here. Wow. I brought a book and I brought some stuff and everything. So because there's something I want to read. So I'm going to just talk about something. I may, every once in a while, I upset somebody. Alcoholics are upsettable. My sponsor I used to have a lot of people upset me because they tell me stuff. And I don't like people telling me stuff. Our chief characteristic, shoot them or something. Our chief characteristic is defiance. Defiance is our chief characteristic. And, I don't know what that means to you. That means I don't like people telling me anything. Don't be talking to me. If you talk to me about something, I feel like you're talking down to me. And there's nothing that a individual who feels worthless deep down inside hates more than being condescended to. So I don't like people talking down to me or preaching to me or any of that shit, even if they're trying to help me. And I don't like people telling me what to do. Hell, you better not, don't give me any ultimatums. You better do this, you better do that. So I'm an alcoholic. That's the way I'm at. That's the way I am. And luckily for me, when I came in here, I found some people that I wanted what they had, and so I allowed them to treat me badly. That's the only way I could put it. They would tell me shit that I didn't want to hear, like shut the fuck up, or why don't you just go out and drink, or stop talking. We don't want to hear from you. We're not interested. They would tell me something. I'd say I'm sensitive. He says, no. Great artist is sensitive. You're just touchy, So I'm in my 41st year, so, listen, my sponsor used to say, when a man with experience meets a man with money, the man with experience will walk away with the money, and the man with the money will walk away with an experience. I take it for granted that all alcoholics believe that they're smarter than everybody else. They know more than anybody else. And they certainly have the attitude that nobody knows me better than me. And my sponsor had the attitude, your best thinking got you in here. So maybe it's better you start listening to people and accepting what they're saying. In any event, so I know what I'm dealing with so I know if I'm going to talk about some truths about myself, and that's what I'm going to talk about myself, that I might possibly, unfortunately, upset somebody. Somebody might have a feeling like, who is this guy? So let me assure you that I'm just trying to carry a message. I'm not even in charge of whether you accept the message or whether you like the message. I've had plenty of people come up to me in the last 40 years saying I used to hate you, but now I love you, and stuff like that. And I understand that I carry a message like they understood in the beginning. I carry a message that alcoholics don't want to hear. I mean, I understand the message I'm going to carry about my own life, my own sobriety is a message alcoholics don't want to hear. In Alcoholics, in the chapter to the agnostics, which was written to agnostics and atheists. It says if a mere code of morals and a better philosophy of life would have helped us, we'd be sober a long time ago. Roland Hazard, after putting himself in treatment in the 1930s with Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychiatrists, after graduating from that facility, said that a very intelligent man from a wealthy family said, now knowing the inner workings of my mind, drinking is impossible. And then the next line in the big book is, nevertheless, he was drunk in a few weeks. Nevertheless, even he was brilliant and sober, and he knew everything about himself, he was drunk in a few weeks. Many's the man in Alcoholics Anonymous who has come up to me and said, don't worry about me, I ain't never going to drink again. After 60 days, 90 days, 2 years, 5 years, then they go out and they drink. I've sponsored people that are doing great in AA. And then 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, they're going to prison. They're drinking, they're drugging. This disease is far beyond your capacity to understand it. This disease doesn't give a shit if you're smart. You know something? This disease likes smart people. You know, it can work with really smart people. This disease has fun with smart people. People that say, don't tell me what to do. People would say, well, if they had told me about the God thing, I would have walked out the door. He likes guys like that. This disease looks for people like that. Arrogant, defiant, full of shit people. Like me. It says in the big book, it says if we could have figured this thing out, Dr. Young said, he said, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic? I've never been successful. Science has never been successful when that state of mind exists. It says you've got to have a complete psychic change. And when you're insane, and that's what the second step is all about, being insane, because it's about becoming aware that there's a power greater than you. As a matter of fact, the big book says there is one power. There is a power. What does it say? May you find him now. You know? That one is God. There is a power. That one is God. May you find him now. That's what the big book refers to. There is one that is a power. That one is God. May you find him now. It doesn't really give a shit whether you believe in God or not. It doesn't give a shit whether you decide to believe in God or not. It doesn't even give a shit whether you hate God. It doesn't care. The big book says there is one who has all power. It doesn't say there's 17, 2006, 5,000. He says there's one who has all power, and that one is God. May you find him now. Half measures avail us nothing. We stood at the turning point. There is no middle of the road solution. God either is or he isn't. What's your decision going to be? How's that one for an ultimatum? And I'm going to tell you something. AA comes down in favor of the God is. You understand? It comes down in favor that the God, I'm telling you, if you're in AA, you may not like it, but ultimately you're going to learn that you're going to learn either the easy way. It's like the cops used to say when I was a division chief, they used to say, guys, we can do this the easy way or we can do it the hard way. You know, you're either going to learn this the easy way or the hard way. The ultimatum is this. You're either going to believe in God or you're going to find out about loneliness as few men do. You're going to be at the jumping off place. Here and there, once in a while, an alcoholic dry at the moment says, feel better, look better, having a better time. We laugh at such Sally. We know he will try the old game again because he's not happy with his sobriety. Soon he'll know loneliness as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. I mean, you'll either learn the lesson and come around willingly. Somebody used the word surrender. You'll either surrender this program or you're going to fight it. Or you're going to try to do the half measures thing or the middle of the road thing. A is not a middle of the road deal. Bill Wilson said, the Lord has been so wonderful to me, curing me of this terrible disease, I can keep talking about it and telling other people. Dr. Bob said, if you're an atheist, an agnostic, or have some sort of intellectual pride. Now let me tell you what they mean by intellectual pride. If you're an atheist, an agnostic, or have some sort of intellectual pride that keeps you from understanding this simple thing we're telling you, I feel sorry for you. Your Heavenly Father will never let you down. Intellectual pride means in your mind, you are so smart that you're not going to do anything that doesn't make sense to you. You're not going to do anything that doesn't make sense to you. Listen to me. Every time in your life that you fucked up, that you screwed up, that you hurt people by your decisions and your actions or your non-actions or your irresponsibility was a result of doing shit that made sense to you. That's why you're fucking insane. That's why you said to yourself over and over again, I ain't never going to do that again, then you do it again. Why did I say that? That's why you feel guilty. That's why you say to yourself, even sober, I'm an asshole, I ought to kill yourself. Because that's what you really think about yourself. You can watch TV, you can run around, you can do all sorts of shit to distract you from what you really think about yourself. But if you want to know what you really think about yourself, the next time you start telling yourself that you ought to kill yourself because you're a loser and you'll never be okay, and nobody's in the room, so it's only coming from you, and you're trying to figure out who's saying that to me, that's you telling you what you really think about yourself. And that's why, after you get rid of the booze, which isn't even the disease, it's a symptom of the disease. There's nothing I'm going to say in here deliberately, and if there is, you can point out to me, that doesn't come straight out of the big book or our literature. And that's why in the big book it says, the drinking is but a symptom of the disease. I've spoken at thousands and thousands of AA meetings. Nobody's drinking. I don't want to say no, maybe there's some guy in the back drinking, but I can tell you something. People I speak to in AA about the solution and about the disease, they're not drinking. Drinking is not their problem. Their problem is they're insane. Their problem centers in their mind, not their body. If they don't figure that out, if they don't somehow surrender so that mind can change, and like Carl Jung said, there's got to be a psychic change, ideas, emotions, and attitudes that are the guiding force of these men's lives. In other words, your entire personality have to be shifted to one side, and they have to be dominated by a whole new set of ideas and experiences. And you know what he says? It's a God thing. And you know what Big Book says? There is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. It says, see your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass in you and countless others. God either is or he isn't. If a mere code of morals, better philosophy of life would have helped, we'd be sober long. It didn't help us because we lack the power. We lack the power to do the right thing. No, it's not. Do the right thing is a mere code of morals and a better philosophy of life. If you could do the right thing, you wouldn't be in this room right now. If you could do the right thing forever, you might be able to do the right thing for a day or two or 3 or 4, but one day the IRS is going to seize your bank account. One day the wife is going to leave or say something to you. One day you're going to have a flat tire. One day things are not going to go your way, and the moon is going to be in the right place, and the stars are going to be situated a certain way, and maybe you'll be hungry or something will happen, and you will do precisely the wrong shit. You will do it's very hard to do the right thing all the time when you're suffering the vagaries of this life in this world. Because in this world you will have problems. You'll have good days, bad days, all sorts of between days. But there is one who has all power. It says above everything, we're selfish. I'm not calling you this is the big book. You don't have to believe it. You can do what most alcoholics say. Well, that doesn't apply to me. I'm basically a good guy. That may apply to Russell. What the big book says about alcoholics is they're selfish and self-centered. Now, I can tell you some great war stories, sober and drunk, but mostly sober, of things I've done to people and how I've hurt people sober. I don't blame alcohol on the shit I did to people before I even came in here. Most of the people I hurt by irresponsibility, not returning phone calls, not doing what I was supposed to do, walking out on my wife and my child because I wanted to date other women. All the crap I did it cold. I made decisions cold, stone sober. You know why? Because I'm selfish, I'm self-centered, I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion. I step on the toes of others, they retaliate, seemingly without provocation, but it's usually because I've made decisions based upon self, which put me in a position to be hurt. Or as my sponsor, so alcoholics are self-over and riot, though they usually don't think so. Or as my sponsor, Bob Sullivan, used to say, to explain it to me better, he said, Russell, you don't give a shit about anybody except yourself. So that's all I can tell you is this. That's the kind of alcoholism I suffer from. And I don't need alcohol to hurt people. Believe me. I just don't need it. I don't blame it on alcohol. And you know something? I was an alcoholic before I started drinking, during the drinking, and after I put the plug in the drug over 40 years ago. You know, that's the alcoholism I have. That's the alcoholism that centers in my mind, not my body. the lies I tell myself, how I blame other people, how I gossip about other people behind my back, what I think about myself, what I think about you, the way I live my life, my personality, my thoughts, bad thoughts about myself and other people, the things I chase after and I desire and I think about all the time. The women, the cars, the money or lack of money, or why don't I have this, or why don't I have that, or they don't know who they're screwing with, or I'll show them, or my life's shit, or why is this always happening to me, or a million different other things that go through my mind 10,000 times, and I don't have to go to any flipping meetings to have those things happen. That's the way my alcoholic thinking in life seems the only normal one to me. And I can't separate the true from the false. And so the big book says lack of power, the power to change that thinking. 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 years sober, low on money, the wife or boyfriend leaves, whatever the hell it is, I don't care. And your mind, you're as awake as you are right now, going a million miles per hour with 10,000 voices, telling you all sorts of bad shit about yourself and other people. And you're trying to say, well, what the hell is wrong with me? Well, you're an alcoholic. That's alcohol. That's the real alcoholism that centers in your mind, not your body. How are you going to get rid of that? Hey, you can stop drinking. How are you going to stop thinking, big shot? How are you going to change that stuff? You've been doing that all your life. Automatically. As a matter of fact, here's the crazy thing. You actually feel comfortable crazy. Crazy is comfortable to you. I take away crazy from you. I'll tell you what you can tell when crazy is taken away from people for the first time. They say things like, I don't know, I feel weird. You say, why? Is there something wrong? He says, no, there's nothing wrong. I mean, you're low on money. He says, no, there's nothing wrong. I just feel strange. I feel weird. You're worried about something? He says, no, I just feel, I don't know. It's like, I feel really strange. That's serenity. Don't worry, you'll get used to it. You know what I mean? I mean, if I don't have something to worry about, I'm worried. I get worried about not worrying. Because I know I'm missing something. Because I'm alert, because I'm defensive. And that's the deal. So it says in chapter Agnostics, it says that, so we had to find a power greater. That's why we wrote a book about God. God. That's why we wrote a book about God. That's why they use them in step 3, the full name, God. That's why they say we wrote a book about God. And the next line is, here is where the problem surfaces. And it uses this line. Maybe you guys have read it, maybe you haven't read it. Maybe you don't think it applies to you because one of the consequences of being, unless and until an alcoholic accepts his alcoholism and all its consequences, his sobriety will be precarious and true happiness will find none at all. And the first step in getting out of jail is knowing you're in jail in the first place. And you spend the first 10, 15, 20 years learning what the consequences are, what alcoholism really is. Because you think, coming in here, here's what you think. You think alcoholism has something to do with drinking. Wrong. Drinking is what happens when you don't deal with alcoholism. Everybody gets sober. Your liver will get you sober. Your kidneys will get you sober. Trust me, you can drink all you want. You will eventually get sober. The problem is you'll drink again. And the reason you'll drink again after 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years is because you have done nothing about your alcoholism. Or you did something about your alcoholism and it started working and you started feeling good and then you rested on your laurels. You know why? Because you're an alcoholic. And if you're an alcoholic, it's easy to rest on your laurels, but you're headed for trouble if you do. So how do you not rest on your laurels? Well, that's a good question. I have a particular answer. I know how you stop resting on your laurels. You stop obsessing about everything in this world, and you stop obsessing about people, places, and things, and you stop obsessing about all that stuff, and you do what Bill Wilson did. You start obsessing about God. You start believing in God. You start believing that you were saved for a purpose, that your purpose is to be of maximum service to other people. You start believing what they say in the big book, where it says, above everything, we must get rid of this alcohol, we must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. You start believing what they're actually telling you. You surrender yourself. You make a decision to decide to believe in something that makes no sense to you. You take a leap of faith. Because when you only did things that made sense to you, you wound up drunk. So you decide, because of the people you run in here, that even though you don't understand something, you're going to take a leap of faith and you're going to try to do something and understand something, base your life on something that makes no sense to you. And as soon as you do that, things start making sense. Your life starts getting better. And then you're scared to stop believing because it's been the best thing that actually happened because it's actually working. But it says, the book says, as soon as we mention God, the hackles in our neck shut like a cat. Come on. We hate it. We hate it. Thus, even in AA, where God is all over the walls and all over the books, it says, once we make that decision for God, a sincere decision for God, that means non-bullshit, serious stuff, all sorts of remarkable things happen. Listen, if you don't believe me, if you think this is bullshit, let me explain something to you. That doesn't bother me because I don't take it personally because all you're saying is you don't believe our basic text. Listen, these are just, people come up and say, oh, I love the way you shared this. And I'll say, you mean the way I read the big book? He said, yeah. I said, well, that's in the big book. He says, yeah, but it's the way you say it. Because you say it in such a way that I can't ignore it. I can't ignore it. I mean, I know it's in there, but I never really thought that it was serious. I never really thought that stuff was serious, that God stuff, but you make it sound like it's really essential, Once we make a sincere decision for God, all sorts of remarkable things happen. By the way, would you like remarkable things happening in your life? Would you like that? Well, unless you make a sincere decision for God, it ain't going to happen. Now, you want to hate me for that? Don't hate me. Write New York and tell them to rip that shit out of the book. And this is a step series, right? I'm supposed to talk about AA, right? Once you make a sincere decision for God, all sorts of remarkable things happen. Being all-powerful, he gives you everything you need, not everything you want, because you want bad shit. You know what I mean? Everything. How would you like to have a life where you get every single thing you need? You'll even get this. God is so great. He'll even give you bad shit just to straighten your ass up when it's going off track. Trust me, he's great at that. He will take away all the money just so you will get on your knees and come closer to him and call up your sponsor. He will let me tell you something. Your girlfriend getting in the way of your sobriety? You know what I mean? Your boyfriend getting in the way of your sobriety? Hey, he's going to take them away from you. He's going to take all the shit away from you and drive you crazy. And you're going to be in a situation where you're either going to drink over it, blow your brains out, or get on your knees or call up your sponsor. And then things are all going to change for you. It's going to get wonderful for you. And you're going to be up here talking about how, if God hadn't had me lose that job, that crummy job, I wouldn't have the job I have now. If he didn't take that guy out of my life, who was treating me like crap, I wouldn't have the husband I have right now. Let me tell you something. He's a pretty powerful guy. Don't be boxing with God. Your arms are too short. You know what I mean? Even bad shit is going to start making sense to you. This whole thing was built upon the books they found absolutely essential. This is in our Dr. Bob Good Old Timers. The things they found absolutely essential. The book, 1 Corinthians 13, Sermon on the Mount, of the book of James, and it contains a lot of wisdom. The book of James says, rejoice when you have trials of many kinds, because going through trials develops through perseverance, develops maturity, spiritual maturity. You want to grow up and get closer to God, you better get ready for walking through the desert for 40 years before you get to the promised land. I got people that call me up all the time because they want to know, they want what I have or whatever it is, they want to know how to get that 3 years or 5 years or something like that. I said, you'd like me to tell you something right now? So you got it? Is that what you want? You want me to give you the answer? So you got it? Is that what you want? Well, buckle up. Everything's going to work out great in 30 or 40 years for you. You know what I mean? You're going to see you're going to see who makes it and who doesn't. You think an Olympic athlete, you think a pro football player gets what they got right now like that? Or is it after 10 or 20 years of working hard in the gym every day? Well, you're an alcoholic. You want it like this because that's the way scotch works. That's the way cocaine works. That's the way heroin works. That's the way marijuana works. It works like that. You know what I mean? Don't work like that in AA. So it says, so here's the deal. The only thing that's going to work for you, according to the book, the only thing that's going to rocket you in the fourth dimension of existence, the fourth dimension of existence, experiencing much of heaven and knowing peace. And the great fact is this and nothing less, that God has to become the central fact of your life. And you have to become convinced that he lives in your heart and mind in ways which is remarkable, doing for you things you can't do for yourself. You really think that happens right after you do the third step? No. Now, doing the third step is a good thing. I'm not saying it's bad. No, don't happen then. You get up off the floor after doing the third step, and it's a good thing. It's a good sort of surrender, and then you go chasing after the women anyway. And then you go chasing after the men anyway. Then you're looking at the romance and the prestige anyway. Then you're spending money you don't have to impress people you don't like. Anyway, to buy things you don't even need. You're thinking crazy anyway. For a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. You're on the road, you're on the way, So what is AA about? What is AA about? What do you think? You think it's about not drinking? Everybody thinks it's about not. Here's what AA is about. Further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we recovered. These are followed by 42 personal experiences. I'm giving you my personal experiences here, based on my experience. So what am I supposed to talk about? Does anybody know what I'm supposed to talk about? I think there's a lack of understanding what an AA meeting is about, what an AA meeting is about. You know why? Because the fellowship has changed. So people in AA don't even understand what we're supposed to talk about in here. As a matter of fact, they do not talk about what we are supposed to talk about in here. They talk about problems, the thumbs up and crybabies. They talk about anything except what we're supposed to talk about here. You guys recognize this? Anybody ever read this? This is the big book. This is our basic text. Here's what it says. Written in 1939. This is what it says. Each individual, like tonight that would be me, in the personal stories, describes in his own language, this is my language, and from his own point of view, this is my point of view, the way he established his relationship with God. Each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language and from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God. When was the last time you went to a meeting where they talk about that? You don't. You don't. Because they tell you in AA, in the fellowship, by the way, our fellowship is wonderful. It is. It ain't Well People's Anonymous. It's a bunch of people who don't want to talk about God, that want to shun the solution. They say things like, you'll scare away the newcomer. Well, the truth is, the newcomers that want this thing won't be scared away. And the ones that don't want this thing are leaving anyway. You know what I mean? You can probably scare away a couple of guys that have 15 or 20 years that aren't doing this thing, because it makes them feel that maybe they're not doing this thing, and it makes them feel guilty. You'll scare away those guys that say, I'm spiritual, not religious. All the people that are trying to make believe that you don't really have to do this thing, you don't really have to do the God thing and get too serious about it. The people that want to remain cool and look aloof, don't like to use the word God because you might think they actually believe in him. You might scare away a lot of people, that's true. But not everybody. So here's the deal. I was told the other day, that this is that I may be approaching this whole thing wrong, and I accept that. That this group is a very high-class group. It's like you said, a very high-class group. And that I am acting in such a way, it may be true, like you're like regular people and things like that, and you're really the aristocracy of Alcoholics Anonymous. Sort of like the masterpiece theater of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm going to sort of up the game at this point and apologize for anything I've said in the past, like using the F word or anything like that. And I'm going to read you a poem by Robert Frost, which actually I believe has something to do with whether or not you're going to stay sober for the next 30 years. And I think has something to do with whether or not you're going to be rocketed in the fourth dimension of existence for the next 30 years. I think that's what this poem. Now, I don't know whether Robert Frost was an alcoholic. He used his last name. I don't think we're allowed to do that, but I'm going to read you this poem. Maybe some of you have heard it. But the good thing about doing this shit, the good thing is once I read it to you, it's in there. You understand? You may walk out here hating me for reading it, but you won't be able to forget it. That's the deal. So let me read this, called The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other just as fair, and having perhaps a better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for the passing there, had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads to way, I doubt if I would ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, Some were ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. I'll tell you what the deal is going to be. You're going to make decisions in the next year, in the next day, in the next 3 years, the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, and you're going to come to a point in your life where you're going to start making decisions. And the decisions you make are going to determine what you actually become. You know, if you want what most people will never get in AA, never get in AA. If you want to get to the point where you don't feel like you have to apologize for your faith in God because you're on a new basis, if you want to get to the point where you trust Him in your life, and you know Him, you know, and you have faith, and you know that all men of faith have courage, they trust their God, and you let Him demonstrate in your life what He can do, and you want to change. If you want to have remarkable things happen to you, if that's what you want to do, you know what I mean? If that's the deal, you want to get to that point, then somewhere along the way, you're going to be making decisions. And I can tell you this, if you want what most people don't have, and most people in AA make fun of that shit. Most people in AA, when somebody talks about God, maybe even here now, they sort of roll their eyes. Or they look at their watch. Or they say, I didn't come here to listen to that shit. Or they put it down. Or they get mad at it, even if they don't show it. You can be one of those people. You get the choice to be one of those people. If you want to be one of those people, listen, if you want to have what most people don't have, you need to be prepared to do what most people won't do. You understand? You need to be prepared to take the road less traveled. And believe me, that's why they have a step 6, which is the real deal, that separates the men from the little boy chickas. You know what I mean? The guys who are in the not drinking club. Well, I haven't had a drink in 20 years. You know, that's what separates from the guys that have 15,000 divorces, can't get a decent relationship going with a woman or a man, doesn't have, you know, that's what separates those people out from the people that have stable relationships with other people. That's what separates people out from the people that are actually helping other people, and people are listening to them because they want what they have, from the people that doesn't want anything they have. That's what separates the people out. You understand? And let me tell you something. It's not... When they say this is the step that separates men from the boys, you know what a well-loved clergyman says? You know, clergymen. I'm spiritual, not religious. The religious people. The ones that we think we're better than because they're goody two-shoes. Man, let me tell you something. There's nothing more self-righteous than an alcoholic that thinks he's better than church people. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but Bill Wilson went to church. And Bob Smith went to church. And they encouraged church membership in our big book. They said we lose all prejudice even against organized religion. So when you hear somebody putting down religion and putting down religious people and saying I'm spiritual, not religious, just understand this. You're not listening to somebody who's actually sober. You're listening to somebody who has a resentment. You're listening to somebody who thinks they're better than other people. That's what you're listening to. And the bottom line is that you make a decision. You make a decision. You know what the well-loved clergyman says? This is the definition of the man who is trying to do the 6 steps. He says that's the man who is trying repeatedly to grow in the image and likeness of his Creator. He repeats it for a lifetime. When your focus is on getting closer to God and trying to be of maximum service to Him, which means basically being a servant. The God, my understanding, is a servant. He serves people. He loves people. He wants to help people. He wants me to help people. You know, I've been helping people. I've been trying to carry this message and help people, probably in a very bad way, in a stupid way, who knows how many ways. And you want to know something? I remember sitting in a what was it, Howard Johnson's or something. I was sitting there talking to some guy, new guys, and he said to me right after the meeting, he says, well, I said, well, how'd you like the meeting? He said it was okay, but what do you do for fun? I didn't know how to tell him I was having a great time. You know, having a great time. So I'm going to do one last thing. I want to point out one thing to you. AA started in 1935. That's when it started. I mean, these are facts. You're talking 1935. The big book was published in 1939. In the big book, this is what they said. Trust me, it's there. We read, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Does it say that? Yes. They had a path that they followed, and the big book said, you do what we did, you'll get what we got. This is what they were doing. This is what they were doing in 1935, 36, 37, 38, and 39. This is on page 100 of Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. You ready? We were taking them upstairs and getting them on their knees to surrender, which I felt was a very important part. The surrender was more than important, it was a must. Bobby, who came into AA in February of 1937, recalled that after 5 or 6 days in the hospital, when you had indicated you were serious, they told you to get down on your knees by the bed and say a prayer to God, admitting you were powerless over alcohol and your life was unmanageable. Furthermore, you had to state that you believed in a higher power who would return you to sanity. We call that the surrender. They demanded it. You could not go to an AA meeting until you did it. Dorothy S.M. recalled the 1937 meetings when the men would all disappear upstairs, and about half an hour or so, down would come the new man, shaking, white, serious, and grim, and all the people who were already in AA would come trooping down after him. After a while, they would tell us they had a real surrender. I don't know, those must have been interesting meetings. I suppose after you do that in order to get in, there weren't a whole bunch of people saying things like, well, if they had told me to do that, they weren't in the meeting. I guess there wasn't a whole lot of people rolling their eyes at the God thing. That's a real qualifier, isn't it? I'm going to Amy. No, you can't come. You got to get down on your knees in front of about 10 people and give your life to God and tell them you actually believe in it. I mean, they had the third step all wrapped up. They went right into the deal. You know what I mean? Everybody knew exactly what this was about. I'm going to tell you a little something. It's going to sort of. And you know what? There are some people that think, there's some people that as they go along, they think, well, that would be great. I would do that. I wish I could find a group like that. There may be some people along the way that say, man, I wish I could find a group like that. You ever think, man, I wish I could be sponsored by Dr. Bob or Bill or somebody like that. Then I could really do something, Actually, they talk about that on the last page. Did you know that? They talk about that. They say, still you may, this is big book stuff. I don't know whether you guys read this or not. You ought to read it. It's in the big book. Still, you may say, but I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. But I won't have the contact with Bill and Bob who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that. So you must remember that your real reliance is always upon him. There he is again. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. Now, I'm not saying this is the way I was at 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or 10 months or 3 years or 5 years. But I crave the 1935 to 1940 or 45. We went on even more. I crave that fellowship. I crave that fellowship. Now I'm going to tell you a little secret. That fellowship exists in AA. That fellowship exists in AA. Don't think for 1 second that fellowship doesn't exist for AA. I go to a ton of meetings. I go to 5 meetings a day. I got to tell you something. I do. I go to 3 or 4 or 5 meetings a day. And the meetings I go to, like a 1937, 1936, 1935 fellowship. If you want this thing, if you want that fellowship, I mean, you have your choice. You can go to fellowship where people are just talking about their problems and talking about the problems and talking about their life and talking about whatever's going on and talking about their brain and whatever the heck's happening. Or you can go to a fellowship, because I can tell you the person you'll wind up in the next 5 years will depend on the people you hang out with and the books you read. And the one lucky thing I had, it's actually a blessed thing, is for some reason, and maybe because it was a program of attraction, it says if you want, we have, and are willing to go to any lake. I wanted that deal, and I hung up with people that believed in that type of fellowship. They didn't roll their eyes about the God thing. They didn't snicker. They didn't laugh. They didn't leave the room when somebody was talking about it. That's what they were interested in hearing about, because that's what they wanted. And as a result of that, I made all sorts of decisions to go down the road less traveled along the way. I don't know how many decisions I made regarding the people I hung out with, the rooms I went to, which were different than the decisions I would have made on my own. 10 years sober, I had been doing everything in AA and I was not happy. And a guy told me to make a decision to do something that I didn't want to do, and I did it anyway. It's going to be put in front. They're unbelievable. There's nobody in here that isn't going to be given the opportunity to make a decision to go down the road less traveled. I'm telling you, nobody in here, isn't going to be confronted with somebody in their life who you can either call them up and say, will you help me? Or say, no, I'm not going to bother to do that. I'm going to keep on doing the way I'm doing it. This thing ain't hidden, okay? It's pretty, as you go along, it's pretty clear what's going on here. The men and the boys. And it's going to be up to you what you're going to have. You're either going to be a member of the not drinking club or you're going to be a member of the Rocket in the Fourth Dimension club. Let me tell you something. You can't get into the fourth dimension with third dimension thinking. You can't get into the fourth dimension with third dimension thinking. You can't measure God with the yardstick. You can't understand him mathematically or logically. That's not the way it works. You got to take a leap of faith. You got to have fourth dimension thinking. You got to surrender. You got to be doing crazy stuff that you would never even think of doing with the guidance of people that you never even think of hanging around in order to start getting this stuff over a long period of time. I mean, that's just, if you read the big book and not avoid reading some of the things, you'll see this is the thing that the way you get a new perspective is by repeated humiliations and the final crushing of your self-sufficiency over a period of a lifetime. It may mean going through some pain, going through some painful stuff and doing stuff you don't want to do. So that's all I have to say about whatever. Thank you very much.